What happens when the cold and merciless logic of automation and layoffs becomes adopted by one of its very victims, leading to murderous ends? That and more is what we're talking about today on the seventh episode of Double Exposure here on Slim Radio. With me, Antonín Tesař, as your host. Now, if this is your first time here, what is Double Exposure, you might be wondering? Double Exposure is I'd like to think, wonderful show where we take a film and an album connected by various threads. And we talk about the film, we play tracks from the album, we combine them, we find all kinds of interesting parallels, thematic, technical, historical, and many more. And we just have a great time. But the whole point is that you, dear listener or viewer, if you're looking at my face, go away, go home with a new film, a new music genre, or an album, or an artist to explore, to listen to yourself. And maybe, just maybe, you're gonna find your next favorite right here. Now, last week, or actually 2 weeks ago, last episode, we talked about The Conversation. The Conversation by Francis Ford Coppola, which was a very small, very intimate film. We stayed indoors. It was all about paranoia and about a man, Harry Cole, who thought that even though he was a part of the surveillance system, the best bugger on the West Coast, that he had no other choice. It was just his job, and whatever happened to the people that he was surveilling after he gave the data away, that was not his responsibility. Now, this week, we're moving on from small. We're going grandiose almost. But we are keeping in line with the theme from last time of no other choice. Because that is the title of today's movie, No Other Choice by Park Chan-wook from 2025. And what are we pairing with it? Well, it's the third album by the Talking Heads, Fear of Music from 1979. Anxiety and modern life in a sound form, rhythmical and wonderful as well. We're gonna talk about the connections a bit later on as well. Now, very soon we're gonna get into the first song, but before then, I do have to express. I already talked about this last time, but No Other Choice did not get nominated for any Oscars. No Academy Awards nod, no anything. And I think that is just very sad. There's no not much conversation about it, around it. Everybody's talking about one battle after another, me included. Okay, I know. Yeah, you've seen that episode. Marty Supreme, Hamnet, all these movies. And I'm not saying they're bad. They're very good. You should go see Marty Supreme now playing in theaters here in Amsterdam. But No Other Choice, I think, is in my personal top three films of 2025 for reasons that I will try to illuminate and explain on today's episode. So I do encourage you to go watch it for yourselves. And on that note, there will be spoilers in this episode. We'll try to keep it in the last third of the episode. I will warn you before we go into spoiler territory. But now, to kick things off, let's listen to I Zimbra, the first track from Fear of Music. And that was the opening track from Fear of Music by Talking Heads from 1979, titled I Zimbra, inspired by Afrobeat, like many of the other songs, not just on this album, but in the repertoire of Talking Heads. But now, let's talk about No Other Choice. You're listening to Double Exposure, where we combine films and music and find wonderful connections between them. Today, talking about No Other Choice, 2025, and as mentioned, Fear of Music, 1979. No Other Choice is the latest film by Park Chan-wook, who directed such critically acclaimed films as Old Boy from 2003, The Handmaiden, and then the latest Decision to Leave, which I've had the chance of seeing this January. I wanted to see it before seeing No Other Choice, and so I cannot claim to be an expert on the filmography of Park Chan-wook, although I do want to see Old Boy because I've heard some crazy things about it. Crazy things, crazy good things also. But Decision to Leave is also a very good movie, very different um, from from No Other Choice, but you can definitely see the strengths of Park Chan Wook already in his previous work, obviously. Although I do believe that No Other Choice is better from the two. And what you can already see in the previous work is, first of all, incredibly creative cinematography and editing as well. We're gonna get into all of these later, but then there's also the technology, the featuring of technology in his films, which many filmmakers claim they don't want to make films set in the modern era because then you have to deal with smartphones and they are ugly. You put this on a camera, you shoot this on film, it doesn't look great, but Park Chan Wook makes it look great. And there are some shots again they will talk about later. They are just mind blowing. And then there's the tone. A Decision to Leave follows a detective trying to solve a murder, but getting very close to the case by falling in love with the likely perpetrator. Now, it's layered, to say the least, in terms of emotion. And No Other Choice is no different because it is a black comedy in the truest sense of the term. No Other Choice follows Mansu, a paper man, a man working at a paper factory who, after 25 years of loyal service, loses his job, his very stable job as a supervisor, after the factory gets taken over by foreign owners from America. And due to this, his family's upper middle class lifestyle comes crumbling. And in a desperate attempt to come out on top and find a new job and maintain the status and the living conditions which he and his wife and children have become used to, he decides to take drastic measures and eliminate the competition. By eliminate, we're talking literally. We're talking murder. We're talking, well, again, spoilers for the last third, but it gets quite graphic. And here we encounter the title of the film and a common theme of the film: No Other Choice. Because Mansu truly believes that he has no other choice than to commit these murders, because otherwise he loses everything, because he is his job, and the worth that he has as a person in his mind is inherently tied to his employment and his status, which, if that sounds like some classic capitalism critique, then, well, you're right. It is, as we've seen with recent hit films and amazing films coming from South Korea, like Parasite by Bong Joon-ho, This cold calculating reality of late stage capitalism is a common theme. And the way this way of thinking, this brutally competitive, cutthroat environment seeps into Mansu's, the main character's mind, is a very central tenet of no other choice. Now, to start at the beginning, because we're going to talk about the inside, the mindset, and the thinking of Mansu after the next track. But at the start, we start with the opening of the film, where we see Mansu grilling with his family, two golden retrievers, a wife who loves him, a beautiful house that they renovated themselves, a son who is accustomed to the luxury of Netflix and other technology, and a daughter who is a cellist and who speaks only in repeating things that she hears, which is and also an amazing character that adds, in my opinion, so much depth to the story and makes it much more than a standard genre film. And at the start, we see Mansu very happy. He's a supervisor. He's ready, but he knows that they're getting bought by an American company. So we hear in the voiceover him, his speech of resistance. You can't do this to us. These people, they have worked here their whole lives. They depend on the company. But then we find out that he's just practicing, saying this to his employees. And then when he actually faces the corporate overlords, he gets barely 3 4 words in before getting cut off and being told that he himself is without a job. And this corporate culture of jargon and rhythm ties it back to the track that we just heard, I Zimbra, with nonsensical syllables and hypnotic rhythms. Okay, these kinds of connections is what we do here on this show. But now, to move on to the next track, Mind. You're listening to Double Exposure, and we're listening to Fear of Music by Talking Heads, 1979. And that was Mine, the second track of our album today, Fear of Music from 1979. You are listening to Double Exposure on Slim Radio. And the film that we're talking about today is No Other Choice from 2025. Now, as I said, the song was is called Mine that we just heard. And what we're going to talk about now is the mind of the main character for a little bit because I do think that it is his point of his view on of the world, his keenness of on recovering his status, his determination, and the reasons that that go into why he's doing what he's doing. Let me rephrase that to be more clear. I think his mind is very key to the film. His decisions that he makes, his insecurities, his shame as well, because that is also a pretty significant emotion of the film. Not just shame from and remorse over the killings, but also shame of not being able to provide for his family. And it is this providing that I think also is a pretty big theme, which touches upon masculinity and once again this tying of self-worth to your work and your career and your employment, because his identity is that of a provider. He's been working at this company for 25 years. He, he's giving his daughter cello lessons. His wife is playing tennis. His his son is has whatever computers or or whatever. Hey, they have the two dogs that they have to take care of, and suddenly this all comes crumbling down. And that is kind of the breaking point actually, where well first we have to give up tennis lessons, we have to give up one of our cars, we have to give up this and that, and then we have to give up the dogs, we have to give them to our parents, to the grandparents of the little girl who loves the dog, so she's heartbroken. And because she only speaks in repeating the lines of other characters, which is a great detail once again, we get this even more deeply because when we get the line, "There's too many mouths to feed," she just says, "There's too many mouths to feed," and we see the dogs. So that's already a big breaking point. But then also the house. The house is something that Mansu is really proud of because, as he repeats often, he comes from poor background. His father was a big farmer, so the fact that he made this to this upper middle class stratum of society is a big point, and the house that signifies this and symbolizes this is a big thing for him. And the way he wants to cling onto this place in society, the fear of losing that is one of the driving forces of his actions. So and again tying into masculinity as well, because getting laid off, it's not just the finance, but it's also degrading to him. It's, a, it's an attack on his sense of being a real man, because then when he's looking for the job, he has to work in retail, and we see the shame that he has from that, from stocking shelves, and then he's literally begging people. Begging a corporate manager who comes out of the bathroom, he has his resume to give to him, and this desperation is also very degrading for him. And at one point, he's just realizes that, well, if I want to get a job, I have to start killing people. And I will have to kill the ones who are more qualified than I am, and then I will naturally get the job. And a little side note, when I went into this film, I was expecting a black comedy in the sense of, okay, he just becomes a serial killer. He's very and becomes very meticulous, and it's just him committing all these hitman style assassinations. But it's very actually takes a little while in the movie for him to actually commit the first murder, and it's very sloppy. And we're gonna get into that in the spoiler section once again. But one more thing I want to say before we move on to the next track, and that is for all my Breaking Bad fans out there, I think there's a pretty interesting parallel to draw between Mansu and Walter White, actually, because both of them, they the logic, the rationalization that they do of, I'm just doing this for my family. I don't really want to do this. This excuse of, if I have to provide for them. There's Even though they do have other options of doing that, they don't have to get the money by cooking meth or by literally killing people to get a job. But they become too invested in what they're doing, basically. And then another is the role of the wife of Skylar White in Breaking Bad, and Miri in No Other Choice, where the mild spoiler warning, but at one point, of course, the wife Miri, she becomes not directly aware, but she becomes suspicious of Mansu, but she doesn't, and she begins to feel complicit as well, because of course he claims that he's doing it for the family, or that's what he would say, and he keeps talking about, oh yeah, I'm trying to look for a job, and etc. It's just like Skylar White. She's okay. She finds out, and then, well, she feels complicit, and then starts basically says that she supports Walter White, whatever he does, just like Miri tells Mansu. But we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves with that. So let's move into the very aptly titled third track of Fear of Music by Talking Heads, 1979, called Paper.
Hold the paper up to the light. Somewhere's passed right through. Expose yourself up there for a minute. Somewhere's passed right through. Take a little rest when the rays pass through. Take a little time off when the rays pass through. Go ahead, mix it up. Go ahead, tie it up. Long distance telephone call. Hold on to that paper. Hold on to that paper. Hold on, 'cause it's been taken care of. Hold on to that paper. See if you can fit it on the paper. See if you can get it on the paper. See if you can fit it on the paper. See if you can get it on the paper. Had a love affair, but it was only paper. Some ways they pass right through. Was a lot of fun, could have been a lot better. Some ways they pass right through. Paper consideration, take every combination. Take a few weeks off, make it tighter, tighter. Even though it was never written down, still might be a chance that it might work out. Hold on to that paper. Hold on to that paper. Well, hold on, 'cause it'll be taken care of. Hold on to that paper. Don't think I can fit it on the paper. Don't think I can get it on the paper. Rip up the paper. Go ahead, tear up the paper.
Don't know if I can fit it on the paper. Paper is what No Other Choice is about. No Other Choice from 2025 by Park Chan-wook is what we're talking about on today's episode of Double Exposure here on Slim Radio, and listening to Fear of Music by Talking Heads, 1979, from which we just heard the third track, Paper. Now, yeah, well, it's a pretty clear connection. Mansu works at the paper factory, and I think it's the perfect it's the perfect industry. It's the perfect job for the tone and the whole overall setting of the themes of the film. But actually, I didn't mention this, but actually, this film is an adaptation of um of a novel from 1997 by Donald Westlake titled The Axe, that is set in the United States, but also is about a paperman. So it is interesting to think about how even, almost 30 years ago, the themes of paper going out of relevance was was around, was in the public consciousness because the internet was becoming a thing. And 30 years later, with more and more automation and AI and paper becoming even less important, well, it rings even more true than it did. And actually, Park Chan Wook has been working or had been working on this film for a very long time, and trying to adapt it. Going as far as saying, in 2019, I have had a lifetime project to make a film titled The Axe. I've not yet started filming, but I wish to make this film as my masterpiece. And, well, as you might have gathered, I agree that he has actually succeeded in that. But why is paper such a good choice for Mansu's career? Well, it's boring, right? First of all, it's who thinks about the paper industry regularly and thinks it's exciting. So when you set these murders, these over the top, grotesque, cartoonish murders against the backdrop of a paper industry, especially when it's killing people to get a job as a supervisor of the paper industry, well, it just heightens the ridiculous dimensions of the story. Of course, white paper, red blood, and so on. There's a great scene where Mansu, after realizing that this is the his plan, that he's going to murder these candidates, he of course prints out all of the candidates, their resume, and starts shuffling them around, and he's circling with red pen, their experience, the awards that they got, and then he's shuffling them around very casually, but basically, he's deciding, okay, am I gonna have to kill two people? Am I gonna have to kill three? And it's very, it's very darkly ironic, I would say. With it's this sort of cold corporate HR practice of, okay, well, who gets hired, who doesn't, whose resume is better, but in the context of murder and planning several assassinations, as well as the other dimension of the film, another theme that is ongoing, and that is that Mansu realizes, or well, he doesn't really realize it. He doesn't acknowledge it actually, but he's faced with basically mirror images of himself with these candidates, and because these are people all from the same industry, they have had the same Paperman of the Year awards. They all have this love for the paper. But then once we get to the actual murders and the people themselves and their personal quirks and insecurities, we begin to see parallels there as well. But more on that later as well. But it just, so the way he's circling, his own successes and other people's successes in the context of this murderous rampage that is about to go on is just a brilliant scene, I would say. So, considering the time and everything else, and the tracks ahead, let's move on to the fourth track from Fear of Music, the album we're listening to today, from 1979, titled Cities.
Think of London, a small city, dark, dark in the daytime. People sleep in the daytime. If they want to, I'm checking them out. I got it figured out. I
And that was Cities, the fourth track from Talking Heads' Fear of Music album, 1979. We're talking about No Other Choice by Park Chan-wook, the film from 2025 about a murderous, unemployed man trying to claw back into the upper strata of society. Now, I hope that you're enjoying this album as much as I am. I think it really the the rhythms that which really all are almost anxiety inducing, and the various dystopian focuses on singular environments or items really, I think, really ring true in in Mansu's mind, in which which becomes more focused and more bloodthirsty as the film goes on. And I think any we're gonna talk about the score later as well, but I think any of the tracks on this album would be very, very fitting for a number of scenes. But now I do want to talk about the cinematography and editing because, as I mentioned before, I think they're just insane. There are shots in this movie and transitions and compositions that I've never seen anywhere else, with extreme wide shots where you can see Mansu as the murderer, you can see the victim coming kind of towards each other in different levels of different planes. We to the to like once again the way he shoots screens. So at one point there's a scene with an iPad that is covered in guns, and the characters are scrolling through it. Um, for a reason I'm not gonna spoil, but you see their reflection, and then you turn around and you see the POV of the iPad from behind the screen, and transitions of shovels digging to a character's head. It's just so creative and so it's you some at points you can't really focus on anything else. Um, and I think also this extends to something that's not as much talked about from what I've seen online, and that is the colors. Because let's be real, mainstream films have not been too colorful lately. It's getting better, right? Well, there's coming back a bit from the gray sludge era, but still, overall, as much as I love, some of the films released last year, not a lot of them were, were experiences where I would be like, wow, this film is really colorful. Especially a little sneak in the Best Picture category, F1, which, even as an avid Formula One fan, I think did not deserve to be in the Best Pictures nominations, but no other choice should have been. But just a personal that's just a personal gripe. But there is a lot of color in this movie from the very first scene, and this translates also obviously to the emotion, because it is a bit sometimes dissonant in terms of a quick succession of dramatic and comedic and tragic elements, which are pretty common in modern Korean cinema, also in the work of Park Chan-wook from before, like Decision to Leave, or from Memories of Murder by Bong Joon-ho, or Parasite for that matter, right? All working very well, but with this mixture of dark comedy and very serious elements, and also societal critique, in this case of capitalism. But to be fair, I do have to say that this might make it not everybody's cup of tea, because I, some with people who I've seen Memories of Murder with or Decision to Leave with, doesn't always land this combination or this style of humor. But I do think that in this film it is at its most accessible, and that is due to the fact that a lot of the just a lot of the humor is slapstick, which it is. There's a lot of inspiration from cartoons and Charlie Chaplin as well, which is a bit more universal than some of some other forms of humor, such as in Decision to Leave or Parasite, let's say. So I would say that in this regard, it is the most accessible, but it could be that it might not be everybody's cup of tea. So be aware of that as well. But to talk more about the Looney Tunes cartoon influence, in an interview with Letterboxd, Park Chan Wook said that Roadrunner is his favorite cartoon, and that there is for sure is an influence of these cartoons that everybody, as he says, knows, and Charlie Chaplin and this slapstick humor as well. And he touches on the mixture of comedy and tragedy as well, because what he says is that you can't really separate comedy and tragedy and those respective elements in the story, because in specifically No Other Choices case, the tragedy comes from the descent basically of Mansu, of his situation. You know, he's relatable, but starts becoming more and more desperate and unhinged, quite literally. But the his mistakes and the way he goes about these murders at the start is just comical, because, for example, he's taking out the murderer. He's taking out the house of one of the victims, and he just gets bitten by a snake, for example. Or when he goes to shoot him, he has 4 oven mitts on that he has to take off before, which is literally like something from from Roadrunner or something. But to summarize, a film of many many layers, many colors, both in terms of literal colors on the screen and beautiful cinematography, but also themes, emotions, which I think also make it very unique. But now, I think my favorite track from this album, number 5, Life During Wartime.
Heard of a band that's loaded with weapons, packed up and ready to go. Heard of some grave sites up by the highway, a place where nobody knows.
The burning keeps me alive, I think also very well encapsulates Mansu's story and his journey in this film. Burning, the burning of the burning feeling of having to provide and having to come back and save his family from falling down the social order. Keeps him alive and keeps him going on his murder, a murderous journey. Once again, said journey twice there. But you have to deal with that. That was Live During Wartime, the fifth track from Fear of Music, here on Double Exposure. We're talking about No Other Choice, the movie from 2025. Now, will warn you, as I said, we're approaching the last half an hour, and that means spoilers. Spoilers territory. In a second, I will start talking about what happens in the movie. Well, I've been the whole time, but more towards the end. What happens with the murders? Where does it go? How does it end? So, if you want to see the movie for yourself first, well, please go do that. And then let me know what you thought at Double Exposure by Tonda on Instagram. Please reach out. If I made you watch this movie, I would be very curious to hear what you thought. But maybe stop the broadcast and go away for 20 minutes and then come back for the next show, unless you want to hear spoilers. So be warned. But before spoiling anything, I want to talk a bit about the soundtrack of the film, which I also really, really enjoyed. Just like the literal colors, just like the emotions of the film, the colors of the music are varied and range from 70s Korean pop to cello music to American classics. Once again, illustrating the many different emotional states that Mansu is going through, but also making for a great viewing experience because you never know what's going to come next, and especially the tie-in with the daughter being a cellist, um, and the ending scene of the movie having a cello show composition she plays, which I think is also one of the best scenes of the whole movie. The ending uh, really makes it so that the music is an integral part of the film. Now, once again, the daughter. I think another strength of this film is the side characters that are quite layered also and have depth to themselves, such as the daughter once again, who is a very very talented cellist. She is like I think 6 years old, could be, and the Mansu and his wife get told that, well, if she should really be getting some more expensive lessons, she could be going to the conservatory and so on. But of course, without the job, Mansu can't provide that, which becomes another motivating factor, one that we as the audience might understand, as in he wants to let his daughter be the best version of herself because music is the one she thinks she's so naturally good at that she can, she's playing the cello like this at 6 years old. But the same goes for the son, who at one point, to help the family, decides to steal a bunch of iPhones from a friend's dad's store, and it turns into a whole mix-up with the police and Mansu thinking they're coming after him, and then the son starts noticing things about what's going on around the house. And Miri, of course, the character of the wife herself, is very crucial to the story, where also Mansu begins to suspect that she's unfaithful because that's what happens to his first murder victim. And again, he kind of starts to see himself in these people because they have so much in common. So that relationship becomes becomes quite important as well. But also the characters of the victims, even though we get pretty brief flashes of most of them, they get characterized in such a way that we can, well, first of all, it's easy because we can see the parallels. So by characterizing the main character Mansu, to a certain degree we understand what the victims are like because they're not that different from each other, but then just little pieces of dialogue do go a long way in making sure that these feel like real people, which then adds to the emotion of that we feel when Hansu kills them because we feel like they feel like real people to us. There are some great songs. Maybe we'll get a bonus track in as well from the soundtrack if time permits. But now let's move on and let's go back to the tight, repetitive grooves of Talking Heads. And after this song, spoilers are on, so be warned. But let's listen to Air, the seventh track.
Hit me in the face. I run faster, 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 faster into the air. I say to myself, what is happening to my skin? Where is that protection that I needed? Air can hurt you too. Air can hurt you too. Some people say not to worry about the air. Some people never had experience with. It can break your heart. So remember, remember, when the weather gets rough, you'll say to yourself, what is happening to my skin? Where is that protection that I needed? Air can hurt you too. Air can hurt you too. Some people say not to worry about the air. Some people never had experience with.
And that was Air, the seventh track from Fear of Music from 1979 by Talking Heads. Now, we are talking about No Other Choice here on Double Exposure. You're listening to Slim Radio. And now we are fully in spoiler territory. Now, you also might have noticed we're skipping around the album a bit. If you want to listen to the whole thing, which you should, go do that. But now, let's talk about the murders themselves. Because once again, there is a certain progression to them. There are some more Walter White parallels that I will tell you about. And as I said, the cartoon elements, the cartoonishness, the Looney Tunes sort of influence Charlie Chaplin. Most of that is in the first murder, where Mansu finds this guy. He keeps driving to his house, taking it out. He gets bitten by a snake. Then the wife of the victim has to save him, and while his Mansu's own wife is FaceTiming him, and it's a very comical situation. Then he finds out that the wife is cheating on the victim, and then he goes in with the oven mitts over his gun. He goes to shoot him. The guy's desperate. Then the wife comes in, the wife of the victim, and they start fighting over it again. And at one point, it falls onto the cabin, and then all three of them are next to each other on the floor. Again, very comical, and ends up with not even Mansu killing his first competitor, but the victim's wife. He She shoots him with Mansu's gun, to be fair, and Mansu himself barely escapes. So, in terms of Hitman style assassination rampage, this is not exactly what that is. This is a very clumsy and lucky endeavor that, again, by sheer luck, it doesn't end in Mansu himself dying. So, at this point, we still kind of feel for Mansu because he's okay. Well, he's just trying to get the job, and he look at him. He can't even, even when he tries to kill someone, he doesn't do it properly, and somebody else has to do it. Similarly to Walter White's first cook being quite messy, right? And then he thinks, and then the cops are coming. The same thing happens to Mansu. Not to force the parallel, but then just like with Walter White, becoming more ruthless, more professional. Mansu, with the second murder, already he's more methodical. He basically goes to the store where the victim works, and he emotionally basically manipulates him with talking about his daughter, which once again there's the mirror image of the victim also having a daughter in a similar situation. And then he waits at an abandoned part of the road and shoots the second victim. When we see some remorse, he there's another great shot where Mansu is basically trying to cover his field of view so he doesn't see the victim's eyes, and then but then he just shoots him in cold blood because he's becoming more desensitized and more confident in his abilities as a quote unquote killer, or literal killer. But he still makes a mistake. There is a shell casing left there on the road, and he struggles to dispose of the body. But then, by the third murder, he's his methods have evolved. He fakes the victim basically choking on his own vomit. He digs him. It's very graphic, and it's not even very funny anymore. So this is also the kind of tonal shift that Parks and Wook uses the tonal combinations and the balances of those and the balance of those kind of also manipulate us a bit, because okay, at first we're like, okay, well, he's falling over while trying to shoot someone. That's pretty funny, but at the end he's force feeding this guy vodka and sausage and whatnot, and it's quite gross to look at. And at the same time, he's again FaceTiming his wife, and we're in full on, Heisenberg mode to stick to the Walter White there parallel. And also by this point, Mary, the wife, she's kind of is kind of onto him, and she's like, okay, whatever you need to do for us, I support you. But then not really, right? Because she's not okay with killing people. And by this point, we're thinking, okay, is he gonna get caught? What's gonna happen? How is this gonna end? Because you truly don't really know where the film is going with this. What is going to be the fate of this man who's in cold blood killing his competitors to get a job in this cold-hearted, cold-blooded, calculating system of the job market. But before we get to what fate he meets, let's listen to the next track on Fear of Music, and that is Heaven.
could be so exciting, could be so much fun. Heaven is a place where nothing ever happens. Heaven is a place where nothing ever happens. When this kiss is over, we'll start again. Will not be any different. Will be exactly the same. It's hard to imagine that nothing at all could be so exciting, could be this much fun. Heaven is a place where nothing ever
And that was Heaven by Talking Heads from the album Fear of Music, 1979. You've been listening to Slim Radio and the show Double Exposure, where we talk about movies and listen to albums and talk about their connections. Maybe less so today, but that's just because there's so much to say about this wonderful film. I'm so sorry. You just have to forgive me. And we're reaching the end of our time today because I also want to get in one more bonus track from the soundtrack of the film. My favorite one that I've been listening to almost on repeat. But before we do that, what do we make of this? So we're looking at a film that is an adaptation of a 30-year-old novel about a man down on his luck, but not really. He just loses his job. He's upper middle class, really, but he sees no other choice than to try and eliminate literally his competition by murdering the people that stand in the way between him and the perfect job, because that is the source of his worth once again. So what about this late stage capitalism critique of this basically perfect homo economicus, this perfectly rational man who sees that's the optimal way to get a job is eliminate the competition, literally, again. Very relevant lately, right? With more and more automation and jobs being lost, economic precarity, and so on. So very relevant themes. But how does the story end for Mansu? Is he caught by the police? Is he arrested? Is he rewarded for his behavior? Well, there are different ways that you can interpret this, but Park Chan-wook, I think, with this black comedy satire, well, uh, trying to shine a light on some of the logical fallacies and follies of the system in which we live and work in. Well, he has no other choice but to reward Mansu. He's rewarded. He gets the job. His plan works. He gets the job that he wanted. Just it's just that he's the only employee because everything else is done by machines. So he's all alone, checking the quality of the paper by hitting it with the stick. And his family, they get to keep the dogs, and the daughter gets to keep playing her cello. And the wife, of course, is crushed because she knows what happened, but she has to live with that as well by the complicity by awareness. So not a clearly, not an ending with a clear moral viewpoint. Well, it's up to your own interpretation to weigh the choices made and weigh the outcome. But regardless of what you make of the ending, I truly recommend that you go see this film and listen to this album as well, because we didn't get through the whole thing. And let me know what you thought. Once again, at Double Exposure by Tonda on Instagram, or in any other method that you can reach me through. Watch the film, enjoy the emotional and tonal dissonance, enjoy the colors, enjoy the shots, enjoy the editing, enjoy the performances, which I haven't talked about much, but which are great as well, and the album as well. And next episode, we'll be talking about something wholly new. So have a great 2 weeks, which you won't listen to me. Listen to Slim Radio. 2 more wonderful shows coming up after this one. And with Red Dragonfly by Cho Young Pil from the soundtrack of No Other Choice, I bid you goodbye and have a great afternoon.
아마 나는 아직은 어린가 봐 그런가 봐 엄마야 나는 왜 자꾸만 기다리지 엄마야 나는 왜 갑자기 보고 싶지 아마 나는 아직은 봐 그런가 봐 엄마야 나는 왜 자꾸만 슬퍼지지 엄마야 나는 왜 갑자기 보고 싶지 아마 나는 아직은 어린가 봐 그런가 봐 엄마야 나는 왜 자꾸만 기다리지 엄마야 나는 왜 갑자기 보고 싶지 아마 나는 아직은 어린가 봐 그런가 봐 엄마야 아마 나는 아직은 어린가 봐 그런가 봐 엄마야 나를 왜 자꾸만 기다리지 엄마야 나는 왜 갑자기 보고 싶지 아마 나는 아직은 어린가 봐 그런가 봐 엄마야 나는 왜 자꾸만 슬퍼지지 엄마야 나는 왜 갑자기 울고 싶지